I worked nights as an engineer at the very large array in the San Agustin Desert, New Mexico. The job's simple. Make sure bearings don't shear, coyotes don't chew cables, and the software doesn't lose its mind when we phase all 27 dishes at once. Radio astronomy is cosmic bookkeeping. Everything in counts, baselines, arcseconds. The anomaly started small. During evening fringe auto-calibration, a hair-thin parasitic trace showed up, except it didn't rotate with the sky. Any interference, satellite, plane, draws an arc across our graphs, sliding along the hour-angle scale. This thing just sat there, like a notch carved in the ruler. We blamed Magdalena Peak. Sometimes you get reflections when the air turns cold. I flagged the file and went back to my thermos. That night the trace returned, on a different frequency. We hopped across the bands, 20 gigahertz down to L-band, and every time the thread of sky held the exact same geometry inside the correlator's grid, as if someone had pinned a needle through it and left it there. I ran a test, shut down the central dishes, left only the 3 farthest out on the southwest arm. That's when the first impossible thing happened. The synthetic aperture lit up its main lobe where the math said there should be 0. The desert lit up under an antenna's shadow where no light should be, and in that shadow, something glowed. Understand this. An antenna doesn't make pictures, it sums phases. If 0 suddenly turns into a peak, it means someone else is summing for you. I started swapping masks, reweighted, rotated the array, and every time it collapsed to the same thing, an infinitely narrow source, sitting in the dead zone, just north of the central ring. I grabbed the pickup and drove. The night had that right kind of sound, the world breathing through a T. Sasachi Gauras. BTR. Tet. Ki. Tachi taki dalfe malak bebed, ruts, the hiss of yucca brushes. Magdalena lay like a black carcass. Where the phantom map said the source was, I found a shallow depression, not a crater, not a well, just a perfectly round pad, like a foundation for some long-gone dish. Sand melted to glass, as if burned by a lens's focus. The edges weren't melted but chipped, like sugar. I stood and listened. In the desert, sound is seen more than heard. It compresses the air. Over the pad, the air quivered. Not like over fire. No heat. The vibration was right. I could have recorded it as a sideband and fed it straight into the correlator. I went back to the console and did what I shouldn't have. I fed that quiver in as the reference tone for phase lock. In plain words, I told the system, sync to this. Nothing happened for a second. Then the correlator screens unfolded an image that made my mouth go dry, a field of points, stars, spilled like grain and folded into a web. At every junction, symbols, not Arabic, not Roman, loops, ticks, repeated blotches. They weren't read left to right, but outward from the center, like a spiral, not a word, but an intent. That night another thing took hold. The stow module, the one that slams everything to the horizon, went gray. Software refused the command. The array wanted to stay locked, just like Garcia yelled into the air. He laughed, but I saw him stop breathing as all 27 dishes held one identical elevation, perfectly. The next day, management signed off. Interesting anomaly, likely humidity lensing. They love words with likely, I was told. Don't touch it overnight, engineers will come in the morning. I didn't touch, I watched. By evening the spot in the desert had gone darker. Not darker than sand, darker than sky. If a cloud blocks a star, you still see air, you see scatter. Here was a cutout. When you sit in a dark room and open a door to a wing that shouldn't exist, you don't see shadow, you see 0, and 0 is worse. In hindsight, I know where I went past the point of return. I dug through old correlator logs, 20 years back, during receiver swaps. I found the same thread, thin, steady, on October 12, 1999, March 7, 1983. Even January 1971, before the array existed, somebody had taped raw static off headphones, and the hiss was there, like surf. Each time, the same subtraction pattern. Basslines too clean, underlined every few decades like clockwork. Later, when Garcia shouted, and the desert moved, when the dishes reconfigured themselves into a ring we don't even have, when the black patch hovered in the center like a fingerprint on wet paper. Later I understood. The void hadn't come to us. It had always been there. We just matched its phases. When the ground shifted, and my colleague's voice vanished not with echo, but with function, when my own breath was multiplied into a calibration line, when the correlator stamped in burning capitals, etalon set, human, that's when I knew. We didn't catch a signal. We slotted ourselves into a scheme already running. We built for centuries the geometry of our own erasure, and we served it back on phase. If this ever gets read, don't look for comfort. This isn't confession. This is a calibration log. It exists for one purpose only, so that when you hear the thin squeal in the silence, and you feel the pull to inhale, you'll remember the simplest command, one we say almost gently in the lab: don't breathe. If you made it all the way to the end, then you're exactly the kind of person I'm looking for. Hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot to me. I hope I can keep bringing you more stories, to make you smile, or maybe to scare you.